Welcome to the Hound Talk podcast. We're here to talk everything hounds, specifically when it comes to big game. Mountain lions, bears, and bobcats. Along with the game we pursue, we're going to talk about the dogs we run and the families behind them. Enjoy some good conversation between houndsmen as we dive into what makes us live this life we live and how it all started. I'm your host, Dustin Clark. This podcast is sponsored by Cold Strike, a houndsman-owned business that was built by a family for families. Now let's get into it.
Okay, I think so. We're live. All right, guys. This is Dustin with the Hound Talk podcast, and today we have with us George Lambert. And George, you're from Virginia, right?
Yes, sir. From Virginia.
Virginia. So before we get too deep into it, why don't you tell everybody kind of where you're from, about yourself, what you hunt, and give them the lowdown.
Yeah, so I'm George Lambert from the western mountains of Virginia. I know a lot of times when I say that, a lot of people gets me confused. They think I'm actually in West Virginia, which I'm close. I'm not far, and a lot of times I'd rather be on that side of the line. But no, I'm in Virginia, in the mountains of the western side of Virginia, and we pretty much specifically run bear. Once in a while I'll catch a cat or something, but that's not on purpose.
Okay.
So yeah, we typically specifically just run bear.
Run bear. So how long have you been into hounds?
So I grew up around hounds and with hounds, and dad used to coon hunt basically. So I was probably 8, 9 years old. I think I was 8. And my uncle actually, which he wasn't a hardcore bear hunter, but he went with a group of guys and he actually just invited me along, and I was just a young kid, and went along and they just took me right into the group of guys, and of course let me kill my first bear. And then it just led into me having hounds of my own.
I definitely get that. Didn't have anyone in my family that had it, but I started working with some guys when I was 19 and they had hounds, and I went with them once and I was hooked after that.
Yeah.
I had a dog in the backyard real short after that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dad had some beagles and stuff also, so I was familiar with running game, but going into that, roar of a pack of hounds on a bear tree, it just added another level.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a different game going from probably coons and even beagles, depending on what he ran with beagles. But that's going to bears, that's a whole different atmosphere, a whole different way for sure.
Right.
And that's how we get kind of changing over from hunting lions to bears. It's in a sense kind of the same, but in another sense it's completely different on the whole aspect of range, on how fast paced it is, and
right,
the kind of places we're hunting versus how we hunt, whether it's free casting or rigging on the truck or riding mules, which is what you do quite a bit as well, right? You ride mules.
Yeah. So and when I say ride mules here in Virginia, it's not unheard of, but it's not typical. I mean, it's pretty rare to see a person on a horse or a mule, and it just in general, but then you add dogs into it and it's really unheard of. So, but yeah, I got into mules and stuff a little bit, and I don't hunt off of them as much as I would like to, and the reason is I train dogs, and I get dogs sent to me. So, and a lot of times I'm starting with young dog. People sends me young dogs and all that good stuff. So, that 1 month just isn't enough time to put all what I need to do and get them to leave a tree without no lead straps.
No,
so, long story short, a lot of times I leave the mules home just because, I got so many young dogs that have never been around a horse or a mule.
Yep. No, I get that completely. I understand that because a lot of times when we're hunting in the spring or even during the winter, when I'm up in Utah with some friends, we're on mules all the time, and it definitely makes it harder, especially when you're trying to get as many runs in on some of these young dogs for clients. for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
And especially with bears, where a lot of times it's a lot funner to go ride your mule right to the tree, but sometimes it's a little more proficient to rig roads to get a fresh
Oh
track.
yeah, 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 and the dog's handling is probably it's half of the battle with mules. Also, the dogs have to handle decent, and of course, a lot of these dogs get sent to me to hunt. They're fresh. They don't even know what a lead strap is half the time.
Yeah, yep, no, I've been there. I bring in a few every year for some bears training in the summer and sometimes in the spring, and it's my definition of a handle on a dog and someone else's definition of a handle on a dog is a whole different one.
Right, right. Well, see,
It's,
that's
yeah.
here in the East, a lot of people don't even worry about putting a handle on a dog. They just you get to a tree, you're going to leash them up and drag them back to the truck, or if you would happen to open a tailgate, the dogs are going to just come rolling out. And people don't think nothing of it. That's normal to a lot of the people here in the East.
Oh, so yeah, I'd struggle like with that. I mean, my dogs get excited, especially when we're hunting in the snow and they can tell when you have the
Oh
track
yeah,
found. They're not stupid. They know what's coming and they're fighting to get out, but usually you can calm them down and call them out one by one. Or when we're free
right.
casting off the mules, you can't just have chaos everywhere. You've got to have that handle and like I carry leashes to the tree, but unless we're harvesting that animal, very rarely do I leash them unless it's in a situation where I need to. But for the most part, I holler and I tell them it's time to go and it's time to go, and they know what that means.
Yeah, yeah. Same. That's I always keep 4, 5, 6 lead straps on me, and
Mm,
I'll usually, as soon as I get to a tree, I will tie them back. And then after we're done taking videos, pictures, whatever, and depending on how the hunt was up to that process, the process of the hunt up till then, if they've runaways, then kind of like you just said, I'll just holler at them and get them off. If they're still fresh as can be, I'll lead them 50, 60 yards and just let the bear
yep.
come out and get going, get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And then
No, I
they're
get that.
typically just fine.
I get that for sure. So what? While we're on it, what are you running for dogs? What you got a specific line, specific breed?
It's I really breed bloodline. I could care less, honestly, but I say that because I think this whole time, pretty much, I don't know. I accidentally, like, I wasn't doing it on purpose at all. But when I was younger, I started my own line, and that was just because a couple females got bred, and I just kept the pups because that's just what I needed to do. And
Mm,
so, long story short, I unintentionally started my own line of hounds, which is what I'm still hunting to this day.
okay.
So I call them English, and that's primarily what they are. But they've got a touch of plot. They've got a touch of red bone in them. They've got a little sprinkle of a Walker in them. But far as most of them look English, and if you was to look back, that's primarily what they are, is English. That's mostly what they've been bred back and forth with.
Okay. So that's tip. I mean, my dogs, they're all just grade dogs. They're not a
Yeah,
specific breed as well. They've got a little anything, everything in them back then. And every time I post a video on like TikTok or whatever, everybody's like, "Ah, English pal," you
yeah,
know, love
exactly.
English. I'm like, they have it in them somewhere, but they are not purebred English. They just look it.
Well, that's the same way, and then but usually every litter I'll get a weird oddball color. I've
Mhm.
got a litter on the ground right now, and like one or two of them, you would swear up and down they're plots. Just looking at them.
Yeah.
The rest of them look total English, and I'm assuming that's going back to, it was probably at least 10, 11 years ago. I bred a plot. It was just a half plot, half red bone in the mix.
Mhm.
And man, them genes, that color gene must be strong because it still comes through.
Oh,
And
I
yeah, it's amazing. Like I say, some of my litters look like Christmas trees. I mean, you never know what color the pups are going to be.
that's that's how it is with the guys that I get my lines from. I don't know if you're familiar with the Meekums out of southern Utah, But
so I've never spoke with them, but I know who you're talking about. Yes.
so I'm good friends of them. I hunt with them all the time, and that's where all my dogs come from. But yeah, their litters, you're gonna have red ticks, you're gonna have blue ticks, you might have some that are straight black and white, and
Right.
it's just because they've bred good dog to good dog over the years instead of just keeping walkers with walkers,
Exactly.
English with English. They bred great dogs from clear back in the day with them old lion hunters that were, bounty hunters,
Right. Exactly.
and so you'll get anything and everything under the rainbow with them. And now they're starting to throw where the dogs are staying a lot more white and kind of having some merled up ears.
Right.
And that's got to be coming from English back in the day somewhere, but I don't
Right.
know for sure where. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the same boat. Like I say, every once in a while, I think all pretty much other than that plot redbone 10, 12 years ago, all of my outcrosses have been to some type of English dog. So,
Okay.
so, so basically they're English, long story short.
Yep. Oh, that's great. That's one of my favorite things is to learn what people are hunting and what they're hunting them on.
Right.
And so you're primarily bear. You said every once in a while you'll catch a cat. Is that bobcat?
Yeah, so that's all we've got far as cats around here. We don't you'll hear of a mountain lion being seen or anything, but or something like that, but I've never personally seen one, and I would think much time as I spend in the woods, especially in the snow, I would have thought I'd have done caught one, tracked one, seen one, something. So
Hmm.
I'm sure there probably is an occasional one that will pass through here, but no, we don't have a breeding population of mountain lions.
Okay. And so with the bears, like I don't know if you've ever been out west, but like here in Arizona and Utah and Idaho where I've been, a lot of the bears are straight color phase. Like,
Okay.
and it depends on like what part of the state, but like southern Utah, you very rarely do you see a straight black bear. We're all you're gonna find a chocolate or a cinnamon over a black bear all day long.
Right, right.
And what do you see out there?
Yeah, so I think so all the years I've did it on this side, I've only caught one. He had a brownish tint to him. I wouldn't even call him a color phase, but he just looked different than our typical black bear. But yeah, I've never been out you guys' way, but just talking to some of the guys out there, they consider it, you know, they're amazed if they tree a black bear, which
Yep.
that's wild. That's unbelievable. To us, that's all we see.
Oh yeah, well that's like the one that's a bear
Yeah,
behind me.
right, right,
Like that's one that I killed a few years ago, and in real good light, he's a lot more blonde than he looks
okay,
now. But
right.
yeah, that's what you're gonna catch. You come out here. Black ones are very few and far between, especially a good sized black boar. When you're looking
Right.
to harvest something.
Yeah. Now
So
do y'all get like that white looking chest sometimes?
every once in a while,
Okay.
but not as much.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, it's not every bear, but we see a good bit of that also. A lot of times it
Yeah.
might just be a couple white dots or something. So every once in a while
Hmm.
you get that big white heart shaped type or V shaped, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that big heart on the chest or
Yeah.
diamond, depending on whatever it looks like.
Yeah. Now, what size,
So
like, far as bear size, what size bear y'all have out y'all's way?
that's that's what I was just coming at you.
Okay.
You're good. So like a good, and I've never got into like how people will say like it's a 6 foot bear or square it or
Right.
however they talk about it, but a good sized skull out our way is 19 inches plus, and with that you're talking a 350 pound to 350
Okay.
pound plus boar is a good bear. Like that's a respectable bear you should be proud of for sure.
Right. Right. Yeah. So that's basically, that would be considered the same around here. We pretty much, like, our definition of a trophy is poundage. Typically,
Mhm.
most of the guys, they go by pounds. And where so Virginia, where I live, Virginia is so diverse as far as our terrain. I live hardcore in the mountains, steep terrain. Um, and our bear, if we kill a 200-pound bear, we consider that nice.
Hmm.
300-pound, that's a whopper for us. Now, if I
Okay.
go uh, in the eastern, the southeastern side of Virginia, we're getting down in that like pushing North Carolina and stuff, and I mean, it's not unheard of at all to get a 600-pound black bear,
That's
which is
insane.
amazing.
That is a big bear. Good
Yeah,
Lord.
now, I've never personally went down that way, and I'm kind of worried to go in them swamps and stuff. One of these days I'll do it, but I don't know what my dogs would act like if they seen something like that.
Oh, that's like I get on every once in a while. I'll get on like TikTok and do some lives.
Right.
And there's guys on there that hunt in Florida in the swamps and all this stuff. And I'm like, they're like, oh, it's not bad. You just got to watch out for snakes and sometimes gators. And I'm like, no, I'm already dealing with a bear. I'm not gonna go deal with a gator and swamps and snakes. I think I'm good. You can keep that kind of.
I agree. I went down to Georgia, like the southern part of Georgia one time down there on like a big hunting lease, and yeah, I was ready to come back home. You seen more cottonmouths than you did about anything. And
Oh
then you had
yeah.
to deal with the dogs running. We don't have hogs where I'm at in Virginia, but down there you had to deal with hogs. And yeah, if I go out of state, usually I'm gonna head up north somewhere towards. I just got back from Maine,
Okay. How was Maine? Would you have
so
decent luck up there?
yeah, I hadn't been up there in. It'd been years since I've been up there, and I had an invite, and I decided, what the heck, I'd just go. So we was all the way in the highest part of Maine you could possibly get, right at Canada, and
Okay.
boy, they have a pile of bears. Of course, I'm not used to baiting or anything like that. Here in Virginia we can't bait, but up there, running off baits, road system, unbelievable road system. So yeah, I had to come home early because I got dogs tore up, but I was up there. I think in 7 days we killed 13 bear, I believe.
Good hell.
So no, like I say, that wasn't just my pack of hounds, um, but it was a blast, and it was very interesting to me to see the pack of hounds that I own right now. They had never been in that type of terrain or atmosphere, so they actually once you got a bear up and jumped, then it was no problem. I mean, you was going to catch the bear, but they struggled a little bit. I mean, it took them a few days to acclimate.
So what? While we're on that, what's different as far as terrain and is it weather and elevation too that played into that? You think?
So my biggest uh we the biggest differences that I seen that I didn't so down here I'm in steep mountain, but it's pretty here in Virginia, we're pretty open terrain. Like I can get a horse and a mule through the woods pretty easily. We got our thickets that are bad, but they're only a couple acres typically, and if you can get your way around them, or the dogs will push on through them, then you're back in open terrain. Up there in Maine, we're down. It's rolling hills. I would call it flat. What they call a ridge, we wouldn't even think of that being a ridge here in Virginia. It's just really flat. And then
Hmm.
what the dogs, I was worried about as much water as they have up there, but the water ended up not being a problem. They'd swim no problem at all. They wouldn't even hesitate. They'd swim. But what did throw them off, and what I didn't foresee being a problem, is it'd be like these. I'd call them like a bog, and it's if you took a picture of it, you would never even know it was water there. But walking along, you're just walking on like this 2-3 inch moss mat, and you're just walking along normal, and then all of a sudden you're up to your knees or your waist in water. So it's too thick. The dogs can't swim, and then they can't run either. So they got to like crow hop, or I don't know what you call it. They got to like hop through it, or figure out how to go around it. So the first time I was watching on GPS and the dogs was running, 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 I was like, well, they just treed this bear. And the road system's so good. I was sitting there and I was like probably 150 yards away from where the dogs was showing treed, and I seen the bear pop out in the road. So I was like, well, they either got another one treed, or basically it come down to it, they just stopped on the edge of that bog. And
Okay.
no, they every dog figured out their way through it, but that first time, they didn't know what the heck done happened when the bottom just dropped out from below.
Oh, I can imagine, and I've heard of that a little bit, but that's definitely a huge terrain change, to go to something like that. Like you think rocks and vegetation definitely can play a difference, even
Yeah,
the soils, but that swamp and then that floating moss layer, that's got to play hell on a dog for that's a nasty trick for a minute right
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. It even threw me off. A couple times I'd be walking along, and like I say, if you're not paying attention, you step down, and all of a sudden you're down to your knees or your waist or whatever. So
Yeah, that's
it was definitely, and I noticed, the dogs, my dogs here in Virginia, I would consider them fast. They can get on through the woods, but the first couple hunts up there, and I was just a guest, so I was running with the buddies, and they, some of them lived up there or they went up there multiple times every year, and their dogs was just smoking mine. And then I finally, I was amazed, how what was going on, and finally I realized, watching their dogs, they'd come right to one of them bogs, and then they might have to skirt 300 yards, but they'd just go right around it, pick the track back up, and roll right on, while mine are still standing treed back there on the edge.
mm,
Yeah. So no, it was probably 3-4 days into it, I noticed they started learning how to deal with that stuff, and
yeah.
then was able to run. But yeah, that was that was one of the biggest things. Moose, my dogs had never been around moose, so I think it was the very first day I was up there, I had a heck of a moose chase. Yeah, and a lot of that was handler mistake too. I mean, that was my mistake, because it was one of the dogs where it was a young dog, but I hadn't really had it run nothing off too much, and it come across the road, and I had 2 or 3 dogs, so I put right in behind it. And then I realized that my old dog wasn't going like she should, and I was like, "Uh-oh!" So I started. I run around to the next road and seen moose tracks coming through. So yeah, and they was running it to catch it. I mean, they
Oh,
yeah,
I can't say I haven't been there. When I first got into hounds, I lived up in northern Utah, and there's moose there.
okay,
And every once in a while, we ended up having a moose race or two. But the worst part, like, I mean, we have moose, deer, elk, and where I'm at now, we don't have moose. But when I get to where I'm going to start hunting again a lot more, I'm down in Arizona now, and they have javelina,
okay,
and that's one that I'm going to have to be real careful with, because they say those javelina can tear up a dog pretty quick, and
yeah,
none of
I've
my
heard.
dogs have been around anything like that.
Right,
So
right.
I definitely understand that and understand the moose race, because I've had one of those time or two.
Yeah, it happens. And
Yep.
then, so far as moose race, the terrain, the difference in terrain, far as that swampy type stuff, that threw him off, and just my dogs don't hunting the style I do here in Virginia. I don't, and then hunting other people's dogs, like young dogs and stuff. My dogs don't pack very well. If they hear another dog barking, they're not going to just go. They're not going to go see what it's doing, or I can't just basically, if there's a bear bait up 300-400 yards away, my dogs are not going to just go to them dogs.
Mm.
You so that was another interesting thing, where the locals and stuff up there, I seen them. They, that we'd have a bear bait up in the thicket, and they'd turn the dogs loose from like 500 and 600 yards, and them dogs
And
would just beeline straight to that bear bay.
oh,
Where
okay,
mine are just going to stay with me.
yeah. So your dogs haven't been used to being packed into other races very often.
Yeah, I always, I hunt by myself, or I got a couple. family members, but when we hunt together, it's usually when we say we're together, usually we might be on the same radio channel. Or if
Hmm.
I just happen to run a bear right by them, then yeah, they know they're more than welcome to put dogs in with it, or however. But it's not like I'm gonna be trying to turn dogs loose to go to their dogs and vice versa.
Okay.
So yeah, so that really was a big um I don't know if you'd call it hindrance, because up there you sometimes you needed that.
Hmm.
Um it ain't like the woods is so thick up there that it ain't like you can just here in Virginia, if I need to get to a track or where my other dogs are, I can get 200-300 yards through the woods in 30 seconds, a minute. I
Yeah.
can roll. I can almost run if need be. Up there, you're fighting that brush and stuff. It might take you 10 minutes to get 200 yards.
Okay.
So you almost need a dog to be able to pack.
Yeah, no, I definitely can understand that with the terrain difference. I mean, out here, a little we'll pack, if dogs are working a bear down a good canyon and you're up top and
Right,
this bear, say he's working them good and he's not going to tree, we'll feed in from the road,
right.
and so a lot of our dogs, if they can hear them, they're going. Like they're,
Yeah, that's
but that also can create problems when you have more than two different bear hunters that come into a canyon. We've had situations where their dogs pull off and come to our race, or ours pull off and go to theirs. And if you both have a tag in the pocket, then it becomes a, well, whose bear
all
is it kind of thing.
exactly.
And most people are good, and usually you can tell kind of which race was which. But I definitely could see the benefits to being able to do that, but also it's nice that in a way, depending on the situation, that your dogs won't do that as well.
Right, right. Yeah, that was one that I really did not see as being as much. I mean, I would call it a problem up there, but there was times when I needed the dogs to go somewhere, and they wasn't worried about. So that was another interesting thing. Like I say, it took. I fully believe I've hunted up and down the East Coast a bit, and I think a good dog is a good dog. Wherever you go, he's going to be a good dog. But saying that, it did take them 3 or 4 days to acclimate to just the difference. And up there running off the baits, I mean, that's a whole. I was thinking going into it and seeing the pictures that the outfitter up there had and everything, I was thinking, man, this will be easy running off these baits. Getting. I was like, I almost just left my old dogs at home or in camp. But once I got up there, I realized that, if you had a dog that stood on his head too much, or you had to have a little bit of smartness to him to get away from all that scent and find the track that
Mm-hmm.
left them baits. So
Yes,
yeah,
it definitely.
I was glad I took my old dogs. I kind of depended on them. And
Mm-hmm.
like I say, I was going with the other guys, and they had a couple dogs that did really well, and I was just a guest. So a lot of the tracks they got going, and their dogs did really well. I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
I was impressed with them.
Yeah, that's different running off baits for sure. Because I've only ever been able to do that a couple times up in Idaho. Because Utah, where I'm originally from, we can't run off baits at all.
Right.
Arizona's the same way where I'm at now. So it's definitely a different thing. Like it's almost there's too much scent, and unless those dogs are used to it, they just hit the ground and go. They scatter
Right.
because that bear's been everywhere in there until you get a decent dog that knows to make you circles and work that track and find the out track. And so, yeah, that's definitely, I could see how that's a different, I mean, even just from free casting versus that is a whole
Right.
different scenario in itself. So, yeah, that's definitely something different for sure. That's interesting.
Yeah. It was a fun trip. I'll probably go back sometime. Like I
Yeah,
say,
I don't
it was
blame
just
you.
yeah, it was fun being able to get on that many bear that easy, and then just seeing some of them things where I could work on with my own personal pack.
Hmm.
Um, especially to, I mean, here in Virginia, like I say, that I got them settled into the style I want. But I could see if I was going to go to Maine in a couple months, there's probably a few things I'd work on with them a little bit, just to get prepared.
Oh,
And
I
then
definitely understand that.
and then hunting with, of course, our goal was up there. Our goal was to get clients on bear. So that was another, here in Virginia, I rarely even put a gun in the truck.
Yep.
So that was a total different. Up there, I think, I don't know. Yeah, I won't even say it. It was a lot of bear killed and a lot of. We had to finish off a few here and there, help the clients out.
Oh,
They get
I've
really
I've
excited.
I've been there. I know that's how we are. Like 99% of the time, we're just going to the tree just to go to the tree and take some pictures and
Right.
head home.
Right.
But when I'm guiding with some of these outfitters, it's a different story, and that's a whole another headache in itself right there.
Yes. I
And,
tell
and
you,
that's what some of these guys don't realize that wannabe guides, wannabe outfitters, and stuff like that. They're like, oh, you get to hunt every day, but it's different. You do get to hunt a lot more, but you don't just get to go hunt. You have to go find a good sized bear, go find a good sized lion, and if you can't find anything that's fresh, you're working these older tracks trying to pull up this good tom or this good boar instead of just, oh, we had a rig today, it's a little sow, let's go catch this and get some training in.
Yeah.
Most clients aren't up for that. They're in it for one reason alone. So it's kind of a double-edged sword when you decide to guide clients and take hunters versus just hunting for fun.
I can definitely see that just from that 2-week experience up there. I mean, it's such great terrain that would have been nice to be able to work with pups and the bear. Here in Virginia, the bear typically probably 80-90% of them tree reasonably easy. If the dogs can catch them, usually a lot of times here in Virginia, the bear tree before the dogs even actually catch them.
Okay.
I've actually I've had the experience to watch that a few times. Get way ahead, and you'll see the bear coming through the woods, and you'll watch him pick a tree. Sometimes he might switch trees, and then he'll climb up, and then usually the dogs are 400 yards behind, and then you can watch them come in, find the tree, settle in, and get to treeing. Up there in Maine, I mean, the dogs had to put a lot of pressure. Like I would say, probably out of the 13 bear that I took part of, I think almost every single one was caught on the ground and walked for a while, and
wow.
A lot of them was either killed on the ground or sometimes they would eventually tree. But yeah, so that was different.
Yeah, that's one question, and I want to, just like you, I want to hunt all these different states and experience it. But
Right.
I was going to ask you that question: do they really run different from state to state? Some people say yes, some don't, and yes, they have different terrain. But what I've found, like running in Utah versus Idaho, is Utah bears are kind of more similar to those Maine bears, where a good bear is going to take a lot of pressure. They don't just tree easy.
Right.
The dogs really got to work them. Whereas the little time I did spend in Idaho, every race was just a pop up. Like we'd rig this bear, and 20 minutes later, the sucker was in a tree, and we'd go catch two more before 10 o'clock, same way. Whereas some of these southern Utah bears, man, we're starting this bear at daylight, and we're not even getting it in a tree or even stopped enough to walk until 10 o'clock or noon. And sometimes they'll walk this bear for 4 or 5 hours before he decides to tree, if he does decide to tree.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I wish I knew the answer to that question. Do you think it is? Because I noticed up there's only a little bit of timber, like actually big timber. And then I noticed when I was down south, and then talking to them boys that hunt like the east coast of North Carolina, there is no big timber. So I've often wondered, does that play a part in them not finding a comfortable tree? Or I don't know. I really don't know the answer.
Yeah, and that's always one thing that's like just intrigued me, is how they differ from state to state. And I think definitely vegetation and terrain can play something into it, but I think also could be the pressure they get from hunters whether it's houndsmen or, foot soldiers that are out there,
Right.
along with some other things. It's interesting just to hear the differences for sure, but I've always been interested in that. That's why I'd like to go hunt every state that it's
Yeah.
possible, but finding the time to do that's a little rough.
Well, so another thing that I've noticed, and this isn't specific to Maine. This is back here in Virginia, where I do know a little bit about what goes on. But um, here we'll go through years. If it's a good mass crop, um, our bears typically tree pretty easy,
Mm-hmm.
within reason. And I'm assuming, I don't reckon that's a coincidence. I don't know. But then some years when the bear are really moving, switching mountain ranges, a lot of times you'll have trouble even catching the bear. They'll just kind of beeline. They might go. I've run through counties before, complete counties. And by the end of the day, well, shoot. I've switched states before, which that don't mean much because I'm so close to the line. But
Yep.
yeah, and then a lot of times when you when you do catch them bear that run like that, then they still don't want to tree. They just want to walk.
Yeah. Yep. And that's I've seen that. And I think time of year and food and things can definitely play a part of it too. We definitely see in the spring they tend to run a little more than they do in the fall when they're
Right.
eating a lot more, getting a lot fatter for sure. But yeah, that's always just one thing that's intrigued me is how different they run from state to state, versus all the others. Just something that's been really
Yeah.
interesting. Maybe one day I'll ask that question enough I can write a book about it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it makes you wonder too. Does the actual bear genetics themselves play a part?
Yeah, and that's you never know.
Because,
I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
just like the whole color thing, like we get colored bears out here, you guys don't get them back there. I don't know if terrain plays into that or if it's just straight genetics or what the
Yeah,
heck goes on with all that as well.
yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah, it's some amazing stuff. We got. I mean, this is a little bit different topic, but right now, just it made me think of it when we said genetics. But right now, our bear here in Virginia, we're losing a pile of them to mange,
Oof.
and we can't even. I mean, working with the biologists and all that, we can't figure out what's going on. Like, is it that? I mean, we've studied so much into. I've been thought about it and thought about it. Like, is it the genetics of the bear that can't get rid of this mange, or I don't know.
Hmm.
It's killing a pile of them.
That's interesting. Do you? And I'm no biologist. Do you have to worry about that transferring to dogs when you run a bear like that?
So yes, it is transferable. It is a sarcoptic. There's a bunch of pile of, but it's the same mange that a dog can get, pretty much.
Okay.
I think there's a few variables here and there. I won't act like I know exactly what I'm talking about, but yes. So a dog, when we catch a bear on the ground, our dogs can get mange from it. So saying that, I keep a mange preventative, and then also when anybody sends me a hound or something, I tell them that to make sure they're up on either Brevecto, some type of mange preventative.
Okay. Well, no,
So
I understand that. I was
so
just
far,
curious.
I've never had a hound catch it. Now we boy some of these bears, because when they get mange and they're that bad off, I mean, I've been into them and they can't even climb a tree. They're just they have no hair. They can't climb. So
Just don't got much in the tank, let alone to
no,
climb a tree.
but the
Yeah,
dogs will still
that's
run them. I mean,
interesting.
so evidently their scent is still putting off, similar to a bear
Hmm.
or like a bear or whatever. The dogs will still catch them. But
Yeah, they still stink enough normal wise.
yeah,
That's interesting. So how many years have you been running hounds yourself then?
so that goes back. I'll kind of just back up to where I was before. So when them guys took me hunting when I was like, I think I killed my first bear when I was like 9 years old. And when I say first bear, that is the first and only bear I've ever harvested, checked in, tagged as mine. I've had to
Hmm.
finish off plenty for people and that kind of stuff, but I'm kind of getting sidetracked here on the question. But
No, you're
um,
good.
yeah, but but far, like I say, killing the bear, which, as you know, as with most houndsmen, um, carrying a gun is kind of in the back of your mind. It's all about the dogs and the hounds and the
Yeah,
bear. But anyway, so back
exactly.
to the question. But so they let me take my first bear when I think I was like 9 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, and so I started kind of hanging around with them, going, um, and I was gung ho. So they'd get me to. That was back when everybody led dogs. So I'd always end up leading
Mhm.
dogs in, helping get dogs off the tree. That led up to, I think, I can't remember if somebody had a puppy or something. I ended up getting a pup, and I was probably 14 years old. Um, Too young to be owning a pack of hounds. But I had this little female that I ended up, I think she was a Pocahontas plot, if I remember correctly. But she was just one of them dogs that everybody dreamed of having. She was just one of them dogs that was going to be a bear dog, probably no matter what. Um,
Mhm.
like anybody could probably have had her, and she was going to tree bear. She's just one of them. What do you call it? Once in a lifetime dogs. And I
Yep.
was lucky enough to be 14 years old and had one of these dogs. So I really give a lot of credit to her to put me where I am today because, for one thing, she taught me how to hunt. Even though I raised her as a pup, but still,
Mhm.
she taught me how to get a bear treed, and then she also gave me a pile of credibility in like with that group of guys.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is usually a group of guys that are old experienced hunters, they're not going to be asking this 14-year-old boy to be bringing his dog up there to put on a track.
Yeah.
But they was good enough houndsmen that they knew I was just lucky that I had this little dog. And I'd put her on with their chases, and there'd be days where she would end up treed by herself, and these old guys with these good experienced dogs wouldn't even have a dog make it to the tree.
Mhm.
So like I say, she gave me a lot of credibility. Them guys really took notice to me, and it wasn't because it was me, but it was just because I ended up having this little dog that was such a good little dog. So so they really just brought me right into their hunting group. So
Mhm.
by the time I think I got my driver's license at 16 years old, I had probably a 6 dog pack that could easily tree a bear on its own. Um,
Wow.
so, like I say, that little dog, and I was homeschooled, so I got to hunt a lot. Um, so all that stuff just led up to me being able, like I say, when I was 16, 17 years old, I had a pack of dogs that I could go by myself and tree a bear. Even though I still, honestly, I probably still, I wished I knowed now. I wish I knew then what I know now. I
Yep.
think I could have even been a lot better off. But yeah, I was, so long story short, at in my teenage years, I could easily go hunting by myself and catch bear pretty consistently. So
Yep.
that just led right into I finally met my wife, and I hunted like crazy. Then I'd started my own business, so I was able to, pretty much everything revolved around hounds and bear hunting. You would
Mhm.
work during the summer just to have money to bear hunt. you know
Yep.
And so when I met my wife, we dated for a few years, and she was very familiar with the way I was and the way I hunted. And she was on board with it. So, of course we ended up getting married and all that good stuff. And that just, I still have that hunting lifestyle where everything revolves around, I always say it always revolves around God, family, and then hounds and bear hunting, and then throw the mules
Yep.
in the mix.
That's not a bad way to live.
Yeah,
There's a lot of envy that'll come from a lot of guys for a lifestyle like
yeah,
that. It's definitely one of those hobbies that's not just a hobby. People call it a hobby, but it takes a hold of you and it's a part and a way of life instead of just a hobby.
you're so right. In some ways, it ruins your life almost. It depends on how you want to look at it.
it definitely can, depending on what you do and how you let it take hold of you, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Because
I
now
know that from
everything we do, revolves around. It ain't like we can just go on a normal vacation or something somewhere, or there's times when I've been invited to come out west to go on an elk hunt or something like that, but I can't leave these hounds for 2 weeks during September when it's the best bear hunting. you know.
no, I get it. I get it. I'm the same way. I definitely understand that.
So,
So, in all the years you've hunted, what, as far as running hounds on bear, what is and sometimes this is a hard question, but what is the one thing that keeps you going on the hard days? What's the one favorite thing that'll push you through on some of those days that you're like, son of a bitch, this sucks.
so the biggest thing for me is training pups. I mean, that is definitely the tops. And then and to talk about that a little bit more, it's like when you get a pup from, you have that litter of pups, you're raising it up, and then finally it becomes that day where you put it in the back of the truck or whatever, and then you're riding down an old mountain road and you hear a dog bark, and it just takes you a minute. You're like, what dog is that? And then you realize, hey, that's that pup. That
Hmm.
pup just struck something. And then usually that leads up to some. I had this happen. I think it was last year. One of my young dogs struck, and my old dog didn't. And I just took a wild chance. I was like, I'm gonna put this young dog down, and whatever she runs, she'll run it, whatever. And
Hmm.
I'll be darned if half a mile later she'd done come up with a bear. Now, whether that's
That's
what she struck and come up with it, I don't know, or did she just run into it? That's probably more. But whatever the case, yeah,
take the win. Take the
exactly.
win.
So, but yeah, that is definitely what keeps me going back. When you're walking down a ridge or something, and you hear a dog bark, kind of like I was just saying in the truck, you hear a dog bark that you don't immediately recognize, and then you realize that young pup just took off on something, and then your old dog falls in behind it. Um, yeah, that's just amazing. That
Oh,
it don't. Yeah,
I agree. I was talking with a feller from actually out your way, and he was asking me kind of the same style of stuff, and I said there's nothing more rewarding than taking that pup that's either born at your place or a 6 week old, 8 week old pup you bring home, and taking that pup and making it into a dog.
right,
Like that's what I think a true houndsman will really differ from someone that runs hounds versus a true houndsman.
right,
Like, but the dog is life, and what you can accomplish with that dog, what you get at the tree is just a plus. It's like that's a bonus. That's what we were after. But to me, I'm after what happens before the tree. Watching
exactly,
that dog progress, do its thing, watching those pups switch that flip and realize what they were bred to do, and watch those natural instincts come out while you're there just to help hone it and do whatever. That's, to me, that's what lights the fire and what really truly is what hound hunting's all about.
I agree, and the thing is I've tried to explain that to people, kind of like what you was just saying. I think if you say that to people that has never been around hounds, I don't think they. It's hard to get them to understand what we're talking about.
I agree. I think that it's so hard for people that are uneducated and don't quite understand what it truly is about without seeing it firsthand. They don't see us with these dogs day in and day out. They just see little clips here or there of the highlights. They don't
Right,
see all
right,
the long road it took you to get there with this one pup, whether that pup was an easy starter at 6 months or a late bloomer at a year and a half. They don't see everything that goes in between. They don't understand that true bond that you have with these dogs, whether you're the smaller houndsman that the dogs live in your house, or you're more of an outfitter that you've got 20 of them and they're an essential tool for your business, but they're still more than that,
exactly,
whether they'll admit it or not. You know what I mean?
100%.
And so that's actually, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it, but Lionheart came out today. Have you seen that?
I did. I got up I got up this morning to go hunting, and I got rained out today. It poured
Okay.
rain all day. So saying that, yeah, I was able to catch up on a lot on social media, and man, Lionheart, that is a great. They did a good job on that.
They did a very good job. And so I got to see that this spring at the Eastern Idaho Houndsman Association banquet. I went up there for
Okay.
business for Cold Strike
Right.
and went up there, donated some stuff, and we got to preview it before they released it and did their big showing in Denver. And it's a really well put together piece that is more for the education of the people that aren't familiar with it. Like as a houndsman, it's cool to watch it, but it's not made for us. Like
Right.
it's made for the general public, which is a great thing right now, especially with the fight that is going on in Colorado right now.
Right.
So I think that's an awesome film that if anybody that hears this hasn't watched it, they need to go look it up on YouTube for sure.
100%. Yeah. Hopefully, a lot of people that don't understand hunting get to see that film. Hopefully.
I agree. Yeah, I hope so as well. They did a great job, and I know. So the Meekums that are in that video are actually the ones that my lines come from.
Oh,
So
okay. Yes.
I know them very well. I've talked to the Whitakers a time or two, and I know of Becky and Cleve and a couple of the others. They're all great representatives of the sport of hound hunting and the way of life that it kind of truly is for these
Right.
guys.
Right.
So awesome. Well, as we getting a little close on time, but as we wrap this up, I usually like to ask people. I give them two things at the end, and you could pick one. But either a favorite hunt story or that one dog that stood out over the test of time and why it stood out.
Okay. So I will make this easy. I got both.
That
They
works.
tied in. They're tied in together. So I had a few. This was, let's see. She is, I think, 11 years old now. So it would have been about 11 years old. 11 years ago, I had this little English female sent to me to hunt for a guy, and she was, I think, 6, 7 months old. Um, so he sent her to me. I don't know. I put probably 20, 30 days into her, and she was young. She didn't have a care in the world. Like there was, she wasn't doing anything. So I basically called him back and I was like, hey, I'm not going to keep, don't send me no money. You waste time. If you want to just come get her, if you want to send her back, let her get, a year under her belt and then send her back to me. I'll put some more time into her. Right now, it's just wasting your money. So, anyway, he said, well, I'm an old man. He's like, I've done, I don't really have time to fool with a dog like that. If you can find a home for her, if you can get rid of her, just get rid of her. So I was like, well, there's nothing wrong with her. She's just young. So
Mm-hmm.
um, he said, well, consider her your dog. Do whatever with her. So anyway, she was just there around the house. And of course, I just kept toting her along hunting. And this kind of goes along with like what we was just talking about with pups. But one day I was heading down a ridge and all my old dogs, they started trailing a little bit and they was trailing straight south and going along pretty good. And I heard this one little dog going north and barking good, just left out of there. And I looked on GPS and realized it was this pup. Um, so I figured, well, she done jumped. Around here, we got white-tailed deer, which is our probably white-tailed deer and coyotes is our biggest trash, if you want to call it that. So I figured she'd
Mm-hmm.
done jumped a deer. Um, I didn't even think about her. I just started really paying attention to my old dogs, and it was probably a half hour into it. All my old dogs started kind of petering out, turning around, and looking back at it, I'd realized they'd done went backwards. They'd done went the wrong way on the track. So I had a buddy that he's probably 4 or 5 miles away. He hollered at me on the radio, and he's like, "Hey, bear just crossed the road with this little blue English dog." on it. Do you know whose it is? I started looking at my GPS and it was that little pup. So I was like, man, maybe I better keep this little dog around. So like 2 or 3 days later, I was hunting in that same general place. Um, I hunt mine loose all the time. When I'm going down, all my dogs are loose. So I was going down. My old dogs took a track. They finally got it treed. I got to the tree. My pup was missing. I didn't know where she is. So I got back to the truck, and to this day I don't know how she got where she was, but she ended up being a couple miles away and sitting under a bear tree by herself. Yeah. So she's like, I think she was like 8, 9 months old by then, and she had her bear treed, on her own, and so it became that was very consistent happening. Like through that year before she was a year and a half, she'd probably done treed 15, 20 bear on her own, and just amazing. And then she got to the place where she was um trailing right with my old dogs. She was trailing with them, and then a lot of times you'd watch, she'd figure out the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And so long story short, that just it led into the dog that now my whole breeding program is based around. And actually, she's the one that made just the other day I had to leave Maine because of her. I had to
Oh, okay.
I had to drive 18 hours through the night to get to my vet.
Oh,
Yeah, which she's now 11 years old, so she's at that end of
yep.
it. But yeah, it's, you're talking about either a special dog or special hunt. That them first couple hunts where she just started, something flipped. She went from this little dog that would not do nothing to all of a sudden
Mm-hmm.
she was just consistently tree and bear by herself.
Yeah,
And
that's
she was just one of them special dogs that I'll always remember. And the thing is that I got enough experience under my belt now to really appreciate what she was and still is. So
yeah, yeah, that's definitely the maturity of being there versus that 14-year-old kid with a good dog. It's a
yes.
whole different different story.
So what my problem is now I've had what I would consider two once in a lifetime dogs. So I don't know if I'm really worried. Like, will I ever find a dog like that again? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's hard. And you never know. I mean, I wish there was a magic way to know which one's going to be that way. And most of the time, they're the ones that'll surprise you versus
Yeah.
one that you're like, oh, this dog's bred well, built well. He's got the drive, and you think that dog's going to be a good top dog, and it might be a nice dog, but it's going to be the weird looking runty one that's going to come from behind
Yeah.
and just be a phenomenal dog. And that's what's hard, is you never know. You can breed for these genetics, these traits, but it's all really up to the dog in the end on whether they're going to pull that deep from within them and really shine.
Yeah, and this female that I got now, yeah, she's, my whole breeding program is based around her, but she's never through a pup that's, I mean, she's through some good ones. They'll tree their own bear, no problem, but they're not like her. I've never had another
Hmm.
one. I've done tried all kinds of crosses and everything else, and I can't get her again, a replica. So,
And that's what's hard. I've heard that a lot, like from some of these top guys that breed and outfitters. Is it that dog can be the nicest bear dog, nicest lion dog you've ever hunted around, but it doesn't guarantee that they're going to be a producer of top dogs. They might produce some nice dogs, some good dogs, but it's very hard to find that dog that can talk the talk, but also when you breed it can walk that walk and
yeah,
produce consistently nice top dogs.
exactly. And that's,
So
from like your point of view out there. I mean, do you flip, because both of these dogs that I can consider once in a lifetime dogs, by the time they was a year old, like I knew they was something really special. I
hmm.
mean, do you? I mean, I train piles of pups and I train piles of dogs for other people, but I still have not answered my own question of do you flip through pups quickly to find that once in a lifetime dog, or go ahead and put 2 years into them, hoping that they'll, I don't know. I mean, it's just
That is a hard question, because I know some guys that have stuck with those dogs that just don't act like they have it, and then they hit a year and a half, and all of a
and
sudden,
there they come.
and they come, but it's not just a little. It's from here to 180 completely, and they're the dog that's in the front, the dog that's finding the lose. It's like they sat there and learned for a year and a half, and then all of a sudden they just figured out how to use everything they learned. And that's what's hardest, because I'm impatient. Like, I'm like,
Me
if this
too.
dog is a year old and not at least making and contributing to the race, like, it's not gonna. It's hard for me to keep it.
I agree.
You know,
I'm the same.
and that's a hard thing. I think some good dogs definitely get lost to being too slow of starters, for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm guilty of that. Yeah,
well, and I had this conversation, I think, just the other day too, that a lot of, like, a dog has in it what it's born with. You can't take this dog and make it have a cold nose. You can't take this dog and make it more track driven than it is tree driven or anything like that. But you can ruin how that dog turns out if you're not careful as a handler, if that makes
100%.
sense.
Oh yeah, I know exactly. You're exactly right.
And I'm guilty of it. I think I ruined a few pups when I was first getting into it, just because I wanted to try so hard to get game in a tree, to get this, to get that, whether it's ruling with a heavy hand or too much
Oh yeah,
e-collar, too much this, too much that. I think is a hard thing for a lot of people to admit, that you have to really learn how to handle these dogs, and each dog is different. I can't handle this big male the same way you do this little female.
exactly.
And it took me a while to learn that, and I think I definitely. So I think we've all messed up along the way here or there, but I don't think there's any
E-collar is
perfect way.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The e-collar is a awesome tool, but it's probably hurt as many hounds as it has helped.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. And it is a great tool, and it's saved me a lot of headache. But at the same point, I definitely think you can go the complete opposite way with that as well.
Oh, 100%.
So, well, awesome. I've had great time talking. I think my light's doing all sorts of something weird. Great time talking with you. Is there any shout outs you want to give? Anything you want? Where can people find you? I'll put all this down in the show notes, but where can people find you if they need some hound training or want to watch some videos?
Yeah, so I run the YouTube channel Mountain Music and Mules on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been actually uploading very good lately. I've been so busy, but I've got a pile of content I think I'm a year and a half behind on video.
I understand that.
So I got a pile of that coming up if I can ever sit down and edit. So yeah, I'm on YouTube, George Lambert on Facebook, Instagram. I don't keep up with either one of them as good as I should either, but I am on there. So, but yeah, that's that.
Awesome. Well, George, thanks for sitting down with us and talking on Hound Talk podcast with Cold Strike, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you sometime on the mountain out in Virginia.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, you got an invite. Just hit me up. I can put you up.
Yeah, I could handle that. You might regret that one.
So, well, hey, I appreciate you having me on, and shoot, hit me up anytime. We can get into all kinds of subjects, I'm sure.
Oh, I will for sure. So, sounds good. Thanks, George.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Hound Talk podcast with the Cold Strike crew. If you like what we're doing, like, subscribe, give us a review. It means a lot to us. Thank you for your support. Now go load them dogs and take the kid hunting.